I recently stumbled upon one of Onision, a YouTuber named Onision, a particular video he did on circumcision. Maybe I can find it and link it in the description. I've been aware of his position on circumcision for a long time. I've 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 seen his videos and things of that nature, and he, I mean, he makes these videos fairly consistently. He talks about circumcision. I mean, he tells it like it is. Whether you like it or not, he tells it like it is. You were raped. You were genitally mutilated, and society at large and your own parents betrayed you, and you are worse off for being circumcised. He says it in no uncertain terms, the most visceral, raw way possible. And I support this. I mean, circumcised men very often need some tough love in this department. Tough love. I mean, the younger demographic, once you're late teenage and early 20s, you're going to go off and get married and have a kid, at which point you go from being the victim to the perpetrator. You got to catch them sometime, and sometimes you have to use some shock therapy, some tough love. That's not even the point of the video. What I see in the comment sections is what I'm getting at. I see a lot of circumcised young men. Often, a lot of them seem really young, like even like high school or even middle school, but just a lot of circumcised young men. And a lot of the comments go like something like this, oh, this video makes me feel like shit. I mean, what can I do about it? I mean, for goodness sake, it might help to get angry. I mean, for goodness sake, the first step to confronting circumcision is to get fucking angry. I don't understand this sort of mopey. Get angry! That's step one! But this attitude also betrays something else about the wider circumcision debate, which is that it doesn't seem like people are being presented, like especially young people, circumcised men, but society at large, it's like they're not being presented with a coherent narrative with regard to outlawing circumcision. Or at least either that or it's being lost in translation. It's not being transmitted to them. I think this is probably due to several problems. It has to do with the fact that a lot of intactivist efforts, are protesting at hospitals, which for the average young man is sort of, I don't know how much relevance it has directly to them. Another aspect is that a lot of the efforts of intactivism, another part of it sort of goes toward pleading with prospective parents, or especially mothers, pleading with mothers not to circumcise, which again doesn't offer a really coherent narrative to young people and young circumcised men. And then also, third point, there's not really you can't point and say, get angry, go sign this petition, go call your representative and tell him to support this bill sitting on the Senate floor. There's not any one thing you can point to. When you're initiating a conversation on infant circumcision. Mind you, to me, there is. I have an entire worldview, an entire narrative to outlawing circumcision. I have an entire agenda. I mean, I think if it was transmitted to people, they could latch on to it. But as it stands, they're not really getting it, and then they just sort of tune out in a sort of a state of hopelessness or powerlessness. I have an entire narrative. I believe that if we can keep protesting, I've talked about protesting at schools. I want to get kids confronting their parents about circumcision. I just want to get circumcision talked about. It's not even talked about. How can you address an issue? How can you address infant circumcision when you can't even talk about it? I want to get it on people's lips. I want to get people thinking about it. That's step number one. But then, and once that happens, that you're that much closer, and you're radicalizing more people. You're approaching critical mass. Then it gets a lot easier to start proposing, circumcision bans, petitions, and you start to form a narrative there. But there's other things. There's other agenda items. We need to lobby to cut funding from PEPFAR for promoting circumcision in Africa. We need to lobby to lift the statutes of limitation on medical torts committed in infancy. That's a big one. In holding people responsible. We need to lift that statute of limitations. That's something we're going to need to lobby state legislatures for, because a lot of these are state imposed. We need a big one. We need to lobby for government funding of organizations like 4Gen. All these anti-FGM organizations and these FGM reversal repair organizations, they get loads of funding from government agencies. I actually tweeted at 4Gen. They said, ask us anything. And I asked them, have you tried lobbying governments for funding, particularly in Europe? Have you tried lobbying them for funding when all these anti-FGM organizations get millions in government money? And maybe start in Europe, where the people there are very sympathetic and where the medical organizations recognize the human rights violation of circumcision. We need that. There is a coherent narrative there, and the more we agitate, particularly the closer we can get to government funding for 4Gen, which is the closer you get to actually being made whole again, the closer you get to, having your body repaired, having the damage undone. Doing it as much as you can possibly do, basically. Regenerating your foreskin. That's sort of the ultimate, ban circumcision, punish the perpetrators, and get foreskin regeneration available free of charge to circumcised men. There's a narrative here, and the more we work toward it, the closer it gets. Your action actually affects the eventual the timeline of the eventual outcome. I have no doubt that circumcision is going to be outlawed eventually. Existing demographic trends guarantee it. What I am here to do is to expedite it. Expedite the fall of the circumcision industry. There's a coherent narrative to present here. It's difficult to pack into a tweet or a YouTube comment. I guess, which is why I'm making this video. I can make a more detailed video of all of the policy points we need to be supporting as intactivists and things we need to be doing. So, tell me what you think about this video. Tell me what you think about this the fact that a lot of people, we have a lot of casual observers that agree with us, a lot of fellow travelers. But the core of the movement, the committed intactivist that basically has committed his life to doing this is actually fairly small. How can we expand that? How can we make the discussion on circumcision go mainstream and get people and especially young people and young men, young circumcised men, to see a coherent narrative here? So tell me what you think.